So I want to start this video by saying this was not supposed to be the next MLM I was going to be putting under the microscope and taking a look at and doing one of these longer form videos. This content and everything I have found about the backstory on this company and owner is so long and detailed that I had to cut this video into 2 parts. But don't worry, I'm not gonna hold you indefinitely on the line forever. Part 2 should be coming out in a couple days to a week at max. I am literally still writing that script and it is still growing as we speak. So Young Living is a company you all know and probably dislike, mainly for their business practices, but I was recently mentioned and linked to a video by Nikki Tutorials with people telling me she was promoting them.
Lately, thanks to my mom, I've been into essential oils. I have the Young Living sort of like diffuser, and right now I have Panaway, I have cinnamon bark and energy, and those 3 are everything together.
And I'll be honest, I was super shocked. I really used to enjoy Nikki's content, and I look at her as a generally wholesome but smart businesswoman. So you can imagine my shock when I found out she would promote something like Young Living on her channel, and I'm obviously not the only one. I am very concerned that someone with a platform that large would promote a company and product that is so against what Nikki's message is to her fans. Young Living, like many MLMs, is a company that thrives from sucking money from naive or unsuspecting individuals trying to earn extra income, but whom most will ultimately fail and lose hundreds or thousands of dollars in the process. Nikki has always tried to stand behind an image of being positive and promoting self-love, and I found it extremely difficult to understand why she would promote such a company whose values are so oppositely aligned. And just to clarify, since I've been working on this script for a while now, 1, Nikki Tutorials is a massive beauty YouTube channel here on the platform, and additionally, since this has been brought to her attention, she did in fact apologize on Twitter for promoting Young Living and said she did not realize what she was promoting, and the fact that she has addressed that issue is fantastic, but I still see this as a learning experience that we can all gain some kind of insight from. And her misstep with showing this company to her millions of fans helped to spur the production of this script, so hey, that's a thing. Now, for those of you who are not new to the channel, you know I regularly cover MLM topics on the channel every Monday for Multi-Level Mondays, and you guys know I've been doing that for almost a year now. And you also know I am no stranger to covering lawsuits brought on by these companies either, with Young Living actually being one of those lawsuits. But there are many people out there who don't know what an MLM or multi-level marketing is, and there are many impressionable fans of Nikki Tutorials that will follow and buy into whatever she says without knowing the real-world repercussions of giving them their hard-earned dollars. And so that will be the subject of today's video. We are going to go down the rabbit hole of Young Living and uncover the quack of a medical professional they call the founder and what they've been doing wrong for years and why the people, but especially influencers, should not be promoting these kinds of companies, or at least not if they care about their fans. So sit down, buckle up, and get comfy because this is going to be one hell of a ride. So to understand Young Living, especially to those who are unfamiliar with MLMs or multi-level marketing, let's get some terminology out of the way. And as per usual, I will have all my sources linked in a pastebin file in the description box, so if you want to dig more into depth into my sources, you are more than welcome to. So let's get into it. One of the most confusing things to define when talking about these companies is the difference between direct sales and multi-level multi-level marketing, and to understand that, we need to briefly look at 3 business models. 1 is direct sales, 2 is multi-level marketing, and 3 is a pyramid scheme. Direct sales and pyramid schemes are essentially opposite ends of a spectrum, and MLMs sit in the middle, taking a little from both models. This is why I often say that MLMs ride a gray line between a legal business model and an illegal business model, which often gets them into trouble or shut down for their practices. So with direct sales, you have a seller that often works as an independent contractor and as a direct representative of the company, although they are not an employee. And they sell or demonstrate products traditionally in like a traveling salesman type sense, but more recently through the rise of the internet, they integrate social media. And they earn a living by taking a percentage of the sale of their products. Pyramid schemes, on the other hand, are a federally illegal business model in the United States and are illegal in many countries around the world, including the Netherlands, where Nikki is from. Their focus is making money from low-level sellers buying into the company and those above them, otherwise known as an upline, and will gain a profit from those low-level sellers and not from the product being sold. In almost every pyramid scheme, there is a premise of having to have a startup cost or a certain amount of money you have to invest into the company, for example, a startup kit. And now for an MLM. An MLM takes from both the direct sales model and a pyramid scheme to build its own unique model. What it does is take the direct sales idea of having independent contractors selling a product and the sellers make a small cut from selling the item. But it also takes from the pyramid scheme in the fact that the upline in these companies earn a profit from recruiting new members below them and not just their sales. And as certain people move up in the chain on these MLMs, their focus often shifts from selling the product to selling a dream to recruit new people, and in return, they earn a profit from those people. And this is where many of these companies get fined or shut down for being a pyramid scheme. And this is why I find MLMs to be so problematic. When in a smaller scale, they can easily hide in the shadows and avoid being labeled as a pyramid scheme. But as they get bigger, their true colors show and it becomes obvious that they're masquerading as an MLM, but in all reality, they have crossed into pyramid scheme territory. So now with those definitions out of the way, let's begin to feast on today's subject of my examination, from a pyramid against pyramid schemes. Let's begin unraveling the issues with Young Living.
Gary Young, the founder of Young Living, said that he healed from crippling paralysis using only essential oils.
Because Young Living makes their entire brand identity on being natural and God-given and derived of the ingredients of the highest quality.
Because there is a distinction and a legal loophole between saying that these oils cure cancer and things like, if I had cancer, I would use this oil, and this oil.
All of the claims that Young Living distributors try to make about what these oils can do for your health, none of them are scientifically proven.
You can't say on one hand that your company is all about like natural God-given oils to help people's health and then turn around and support the needless slaughter and mistreatment of these creatures that God made.
That there are people opposing what we know factually to be good medicine, things like vaccines, things like cancer treatment, and they are replacing those with essential oils.
Upon realizing that it's a cult, I was relieved that I got away before it was too late for me, but I also became incredibly worried about everyone I know who's still in it.
So what is Young Living? Young Living is an essential oils multi-level marketing company based around the idea of promoting holistic well-being through using essential oils as part of your daily routine. One of their most notable products is the Thieves Oil blend they created, and whose independent sellers have made claims that the oil performs better than cleaning agents and can even help get bloodstains stains out of your carpet after your child was murdered. Yeah, I'm serious. This was a real post. This is just a snapshot of the mess we are about to encounter today. Now, when we dig into Young Living, we really need to examine its eccentric founder, Donald Gary Young, and the impression he left on the company. And to truly understand a company and its beliefs, I think it's important to look at who founded the company and why. So who is the man who would eventually create the company involved in trafficking charges, pyramid scheme claims, cash action lawsuits, all while touting the appearance of being holistic and healthy? Well, Donald Gary Young is noted as a businessman who specialized in essential oils and pseudo-medicines. On their website, they say the following about their beginnings. Our community of wellness started in 1993 when D. Gary Young and Mary Young developed their first organic herb farming and distillation operation. At the time, Gary Young had already discovered the incredible power of essential oils, but because the quality of available oils varied so greatly, he'd been unable to fully harness their potential. Now, something you'll notice here is the company refers to him as D. Gary Young, and all over Young Living's website, they won't call him by his full name, which I found weird. He also dresses in lab coats and attempts to look like a doctor, even though he's not a medical professional, and I believe they refer to him as D. Gary Young as an attempt to make him look more reputable than what he is. If you are quickly skimming by, it looks like Dr. Gary Young, and I think this purposeful rewording of his name to give the impression that he's something that he is not is just scratching the surface of how this company positions itself to deceive its sellers and buyers. So throughout this video, I will be referring to him only by his full name, Donald Gary Young, and I'm not letting that subtle deception slip past me or you. This man has a complicated and carefully crafted history of exploiting people and situations around him to gain a fake authority. When I began digging into his past, he moved to Canada in his late teens and early 20s with the intention of homesteading, or the principle by which one gains ownership of an unowned natural resource by performing an act of original appropriation. Now, the time frame is unclear, but based on the fact that he was born in 1949 and a supposed accident that was said to have happened in his late teens and early 20s, I'm going to assume it was somewhere around 1969, give or take a few years. And it was during this time that he actually suffered from a near-fatal logging accident that caused him to be temporarily wheelchair-bound. And this is also where he initially claims to have started experimenting with essential oils that assisted in his recovery. In 1980, we know he enrolled in a therapeutic massage program at the American Institute of Physiogenerology. However, he only took a few classes which he then abandoned, completing only a third of the work and left with an unpaid student loan. Now, I tried to look up what physiogenerology is, and the only results that came up were all related to Donald Gary Young, so I found that to be super suspicious. But based on roots of words, we can discern the following information. Physio is a Latin root word meaning nature or natural or physical. Generology was the much harder root word to figure out, as all searches were redirecting me to genealogy, which comes from the Latin word genealogia, meaning the making of a pedigree, or the study of family. Gen is a term for general, and ology refers to any science or branch of knowledge. So based on that combination of words, I can only conclude that he went to study the general natural knowledge, which most likely had information about holistic practices, but with a massage therapy angle. Following his departure from that school, he claimed to have received a doctorate degree in naturopathy in 1985, or a form of alternative medicine that employs an array of pseudoscientific practices branded as natural, non-invasive, or promoting self-healing. I'm going to let it slide that it takes about 8 years to actually complete education for a doctorate, but okay. In 1982, he also was apparently operating an unlicensed clinic in Spokane, Washington, so that knocks off a couple more years, but we'll get to that in just a second. Now, there might be an angry Young Living essentials oil peddler preparing to write me a nasty gram about how this proves he's a doctor and not lying, and that I'm just purposefully agitating people by calling him Donald Gary Young instead of placing a respective doctor prefix to his name. And maybe he was extremely gifted and was able to finish his degree early because he's such a prodigy in his field. Sure. My issue is that the university isn't actually real. The university Donald Gary Young attended is called the Bernardian University. The university is known as a mail-order diploma mill, where you give them a certain amount of money and they mail you a certification. this university was not accredited by the US Secretary of State as a legitimate college, and that degrees from that location are essentially useless. As a matter of fact, when state investigators looked into this university, they found it operated out of a small office with no classrooms that had 4 faculty members who were essentially paper graders, and that only one of them actually even had a high school diploma. Investigators also found that law books Joseph Cadens, founder of this university, claimed to have written were merely an incomplete compilation of texts written by other authors which Cadens had copied on Xerox machines. After Cadens died, the business was moved from Nevada to California, where it is still currently in operation just outside of Los Angeles. And I don't know about you, but I have never seen a university that only has 1 employee and makes $86,000 a year, but here it is, still withering in the shadows to this day. And this is the fantastic, wonderful, totally legit college that the founder of Young Living, Donald Gary Young, graduated from. There is his great authority that founded a very scientific and accurate company, if you say so. So now we get to start talking about how things go from deceptive to dangerous. In 1982, Donald Gary Young opened the Unlicensed Clinic in Spokane, Washington, as I had mentioned earlier. This was a pseudo-medical clinic, one of the first of many he would attempt to do in his lifetime, and this one offered a variety of unlicensed treatments, to include childbirth, claims that he could detect cancer with a simple blood test and treat it. These would all generally fall under medical procedures typically performed by an actual medical professional and not someone who was at this time didn't even have the crappy paid-for fake degree. He was just out and about being careless with people's lives. I found an article from the Spokane Chronicle dated Thursday, October 7th of 1982 about Donald Gary Young killing his own infant daughter. In the article, it says Donald Gary Young's daughter died during a failed water birth performed by him. He tried to have his wife give birth in a whirlpool bath and kept the baby submerged underwater for a whole hour, effectively drowning the newborn under the waters. The daughter was birthed at his medical facility, which we will get into because that place is a medical nightmare. But back to this article. After an hour, an ambulance was called because his wife was hemorrhaging and because the baby was not breathing, and Donald Gary Young was almost responsible for 2 deaths that day. When the medical professionals and police arrived on scene, they reported medical equipment on the premises to include an examination table, a heating lamp, blood pressure equipment, rubber gloves, a suction unit, and clamps. But when an ambulance driver passed the facility later that day, he claims to have seen equipment being removed from the building, and that when police revisited the location hours later, there was no equipment to be seen, and Donald Gary Young even denied being in possession of such equipment. At the time, the death was ruled as accidental, although I have no idea how you accidentally keep a baby underwater for an hour and expect to have positive results. And as a little bit more of a confusing tidbit, in the concluded coroner's report, it was actually stated that if his daughter was not submerged underwater, she would have been alive and healthy and there were no signs of a stillbirth. So, just saying. Just about 6 months after the death of his daughter at his facility, Donald Gary Young was finally brought to a minor amount of justice. I found an article from the local newspaper, the Spokesman Review, and found an article from March 10, 1983 called Arrest Result of Attempt to Police All Professions. And let's take a look at what this article had to say. The arrest of a Spokane man for practicing medicine without a license is the outgrowth of a new attempt by the State Department of Licensing to police all registered professions, an agency official said Wednesday. Ron Weaver, Chief Investigations for the Professional and Administrative Licensing Divisions, said his unit's efforts to include checks of real estate dealings and sale of securities. Donald Gary Young, 33, E1221 29th, was arrested at his home about 2 p.m. Tuesday by city police following a joint undercover investigation with city police. Young was charged with 1 count of practicing medicine without a license, a gross misdemeanor punishable by up to a year in jail and a $1,000 fine. Young, who is being represented by Spokane attorney Carl Maxey, appeared before Superior Court Judge John J. Ripple Wednesday afternoon and was released after posting a $500 cash bond. State licensing authorities joined the investigation after receiving a request from prosecuting attorney Donald Brockett, who asked the state's Board of Medical Examiners for assistance, said Weaver. According to city police, the investigation was initiated about 2 weeks ago. Weaver said that 2 undercover agents, one from the city police and the other from the Department of Licensing's investigative unit, contacted Young about his services. The state's investigator is a registered male nurse, Weaver said. According to information filed in the Superior Court here, Young allegedly offered to deliver a baby and to treat cancer. Young's daughter died during childbirth during an underwater birthing technique in a whirlpool bath at a former East Spokane health club last September. City homicide detectives investigated the case, but authorities ruled the death was accidental, officials said. So there is Young Living's future founder, a bad medical con man who had already managed to accidentally murder his own daughter. Let's not skip over these juicy details either. This article states that Young was the subject of an internal investigation against him, and in their undercover sting, he promised the state's investigator to deliver the baby and to treat cancer. Both are claims you cannot make or do, especially without a license. Donald Gary Young pleaded guilty to practicing medicine without a license and was charged a fine and placed on a suspended probation for a year, which I feel is an incredible injustice. Now armed with the death of an infant under his belt and a shiny new printed fake doctorate degree, Donald Gary Young made his way down to Tijuana, Mexico, where he opened another clinic and claimed to be a naturopathic doctor. Now, I casually mentioned earlier that he claims to have started experimenting with essential oils during his recovery from the logging accident in the late 1960s to early 70s, but in his personal blog, he wrote a post in 2015 regarding his experience with this clinic. He claims in 1985 he was approached by a woman and her sister about essential oils and aromatherapy, and I quote, these are his written words. I said, aromatherapy? Oh, been there, done it, no thank you, not interested. I could see by her body gestures and energy that I had insulted her somehow, so I said, well, at least in my experience, I see no value in them. And that's a little bit of a hot take against essential oils when he also claimed essential oils are what helped to expedite his recovery process post-logging incident. Wait, I know I heard that somewhere else too. Oh, wait, that's right, his obituary. See, he passed away in 2018, just so we're clear about that, but that doesn't negate anything he did during his lifetime. However, in his obituary, it says the following. After 5 years of logging and ranching, Young suffered debilitating injuries in a serious logging accident and was confined to a wheelchair with no expectation of walking again, which caused him to endure years of pain and depression. Channeling the cowboy spirit of not backing down, it was on this path where Young's personal journey began, as he wanted to learn everything he could about natural healing and where he was introduced to essential oils. You know, I hear it's pretty easy to keep your story straight when it's the truth, so I guess this is just another oopsie, right? Just like his daughter, right? But back to this Mexico clinic that he opened up now. So Donald Gary Young's clinic offered detoxification treatments from cancer and lupus. And what did he use for these cancer treatments? Laetrile. And if you're a non-medical professional like myself, you'll want to know exactly what this is. Laetrile is a chemical compound derived from apricot pits, raw nuts, and lima beans, and therefore it had an amazing appeal for the alternative medicine communities. Unfortunately, when the compound is ingested into the human body, the compound transforms into cyanide, which is a toxin that can kill. And without careful medical supervision, these doses can cause cases of cyanide toxicity and ultimately death. And these treatments caught the attention of the Los Angeles Times in 1987, who made their own investigation into this treatment center. In this new treatment center, prospective patients were told to prick their fingers on 2 glass slides and then mail the slides and $60 to the clinic to be diagnosed. To account for inflation, if you were to pay for that same test today, it would cost you $135.85. So these were really not cheap initial tests. But how was a reporter going to test the validity of these tests and diagnoses provided by Donald Gary Young in his quack clinic? Well, they sent an animal blood on the slides, specifically a cat. And sure enough, the clinic's health educator, Sharon Reynolds, who also casts horoscope readings for patients for whatever reason, examined the slides of cat blood under the microscope and concluded she found evidence of an aggressive cancer as well as liver problems. She also claimed the cancer had been present for 4 to 5 years. So the reporter went in person and the tests were redone using the reporter's blood. Sharon's new diagnosis changed from an aggressive cancer to latent cancer, but she did remain adamant about there being liver dysfunction and pancreas and thyroid problems. Her solution to cure the reporter of these problems was a supervised program of cleaning, detox, and rebuilding. The detoxification program at the clinic, which consisted of colonostics, a special diet, and various nostrums, cost $2,000 per week, paid in advance. An at-home program was also available for $90 plus about $400 worth of vitamins and supplements that Donald Gary Young sells through his apparent vitamin company that he owned in California. The Los Angeles Times decided to challenge the clinic one more time with another set of blood samples, but this time it was chicken blood from a local poultry shop. With chicken blood, however, there is a major difference between it and human blood, something that can be easily identified through a magnifying glass. The red blood cells in chicken blood are oval-shaped and have no nuclei, which is drastically different from the round, non-nucleated cells in the blood of animals. This shape change would be an immediate red flag that something was wrong, but that chicken blood was diagnosed as human blood and they claimed there was liver inflammation. The Times additionally sent the chicken blood slides to an actual doctor, Dr. Faramaz Naeem, the head of hematopathology, sorry if I butchered that, department at the UCLA Medical Center. He was able to immediately identify the blood correctly. When he was told why he was asked to examine the blood and asked his thoughts about these tests, he said that the blood slides used for valid diagnostic purposes needed to be thinly smeared and stained so that individual cells could be clearly seen under a microscope, which these slides could not do. Dr. Naeem and other blood analysts point out that information from such examinations is limited and is normally used in conjunction with other medical data in researching a diagnosis. And he finally concluded that the slides being prepared were not smeared and the cells were just lumped together, which would prove to be ineffective to use as a diagnosis tool for anything. When the news reporter confronted Sharon Reynolds with their evidence and revealed the blood origins, her defense was that she'd never seen chicken blood before, so she would not have known. And when questioned about her initial diagnosis about the cat blood, she stood by it. The cat was later taken to a vet and deemed to be medically healthy and had none of the ailments described by Sharon. The clinic in Mexico would be shut down a year later, and that's to no one's surprise. That was all the preliminary information I had to present just to get you to the start of Young Living. I think looking at the founder's morals and code of ethics speaks strongly as to what the foundation of the company will be built on. And based on the current analysis of Donald Gary Young's past, Young Living was going to be built from the foundation of a man who was charged for practicing medicine without a medical license, drowning his own infant daughter, getting fake medical licenses to trick people into believing he was a doctor when he was not, falsely treating patients for illnesses they didn't have, claiming to cure cancer with uncontrolled substances known to lead to cyanide toxicity deaths, and this would be the person that would start Young Living essential oils? And so this is where I'll be ending part 1 of this 2-part video on Young Living essential oils. Now that we have a more clear picture of who the man behind the brand really is, make sure to let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below, and make sure to be back when we wrap up this mess in a couple days with a bow and take a look at the full scope of mistakes made by Donald Gary Young and his empire of lies that he built. Thank you all for watching this video. Make sure to hit a like and subscribe. If you guys want to join the channel and become a member, make sure to hit that join button for some really awesome perks, and thank you to everyone who is already a member. And if you want even more content from me, make sure to pop open that description box where you can find all the links to all of my social media, second channel, Discord server, subreddit, Twitch, and a ton more good stuff. Again, thank you all for watching today's video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys!